Jonathan Ellis had worked hard to get where he was. He wasn't just a successful businessman. He was the kind of person who had built his wealth from the ground up. His ventures in real estate and technology had made him well known in his city, and he had earned respect from those who knew him. Jonathan had always been proud of his achievements, but he was also a man who believed in treating people with kindness and fairness, regardless of their background. One day, after a long week of meetings and negotiations, Jonathan decided to treat himself. He booked a stay at one of the finest hotels in the city, a luxurious five-star establishment known for its impeccable service. The hotel was famous for its grand lobby, its elegant decor, and the kind of exclusivity that made it a popular choice for high-profile guests. When Jonathan arrived at the hotel, he was greeted by the doorman, who opened the door for him. But things didn't go as smoothly as he had expected. The receptionist at the front desk, a young woman, looked at him with an almost dismissive expression. She asked for his identification and credit card, as expected, but there was something in her tone that Jonathan couldn't quite place. It wasn't the usual warm welcome he was used to. After a few moments of awkward silence, the receptionist seemed to hesitate before handing him his room key. Jonathan's gut told him something wasn't right, but he brushed it off, eager to relax after a busy week. Little did he know, things were about to take a strange turn. Later that evening, Jonathan was enjoying a quiet dinner at the hotel's restaurant, savoring the gourmet dishes, when a staff member approached his table. The young man seemed nervous, shifting from foot to foot. He stammered as he told Jonathan that the hotel had overbooked and that they needed to ask him to leave for the night. Jonathan was stunned. He had paid in advance for his stay, and there was no way he could have misunderstood the reservation process. "I'm afraid we can't accommodate you any longer," the staff member said, looking uncomfortable. "It's a mistake, sir, but we really need the room." Jonathan's confusion quickly turned to frustration. He tried to reason with the staff member, explaining that he had made his reservation well in advance and that he had been treated unfairly. The young man apologized profusely, but he said there was nothing they could do. Jonathan was being asked to leave, no explanations given. He was being told in no uncertain terms that he didn't belong there. As Jonathan walked out of the restaurant, his mind raced. He couldn't understand how something like this could happen in such an upscale hotel. Was it really a mistake, or had something else been going on? It didn't sit right with him. And the longer he thought about it, the more he felt that there was something deeper at play. He wasn't just being asked to leave because of an overbooked room. This was something more. Jonathan had been humiliated and dismissed without reason, and that was something he couldn't let slide. That night, as he sat in his car, trying to process what had happened, Jonathan made a decision. He wouldn't let this disrespect stand. He would make sure the hotel learned what it meant to treat someone like him this way. He wasn't just going to forget about it. No, this would be the turning point, a lesson that the hotel would never forget. Jonathan sat in his car that night, his mind racing. He couldn't believe what had just happened. After all his hard work, his success, and everything he had achieved, he had been treated like he didn't belong. His frustration grew with every passing minute. The more he thought about it, the more it irritated him. It wasn't just that they had asked him to leave, it was the way they treated him. The way the staff had looked at him, the way they spoke to him, the way they made him feel less than human. It stung. Jonathan was used to being respected. He had built his businesses from scratch, fought hard to get where he was, and never once had he been treated like that. He wasn't someone who accepted unfairness, especially when it came to how people treated each other. He didn't take disrespect lightly, and he certainly wasn't going to let it slide this time. As he drove away from the hotel, Jonathan made a promise to himself. He would find a way to make them regret their actions. He wasn't just going to walk away and forget about it. No, he was going to turn this situation around. He was going to show them that there was a price to be paid for treating people this way. And he knew just how he was going to do it. Jonathan's mind worked quickly. He had the resources, the connections, and the skills to make a serious impact. He thought about the hotel's ownership, the board members, the investors. Who were the people behind this? Who made the decisions? Jonathan knew that this hotel wasn't just a single establishment. It was part of a larger chain of high-end hotels that catered to the wealthy and powerful. If he could find a way to get to the heart of it, to the people who owned it, maybe then he could get his revenge. But revenge wasn't just about making them pay. It was about making a statement. Jonathan wasn't the kind of person to go after petty payback. What he wanted was to change things, to make sure no one else would ever feel the way he had been made to feel. The humiliation he had experienced that night was a reminder that no matter how successful you were, some people still judged you based on things that had nothing to do with your worth. He would show them that he was more than just a businessman. He was someone who stood up for what was right. Jonathan began making calls. He contacted his lawyer, a trusted advisor who had helped him with many of his past business ventures. Together, they researched the hotel's owners and dug into the hotel's financials. Jonathan had always been smart with his investments. He knew how to read balance sheets and market reports, and he understood the weaknesses in any business. This hotel wasn't immune to scrutiny, and he knew that with enough effort, he could find a way in. The more Jonathan dug, the more he realized that the hotel had its fair share of struggles, financial ones, operational ones, and even reputational ones. But the hotel's management was proud, perhaps even arrogant. They had no idea what was coming. They thought they could push someone like Jonathan around, but they were about to learn that he wasn't someone who could be easily dismissed. With each day, Jonathan's resolve grew stronger. He wasn't just going to let this moment define him. He was going to take control of the situation and make sure the hotel would never forget who he was. It wasn't going to be about the money. It wasn't about showing them he could outspend them. It was about making a statement. He was going to show them that no one could overlook him again, and when it was all over, they'd have no choice but to respect him. Jonathan's determination only grew stronger as the days passed. He wasn't one to back down easily, and this time, the challenge had a personal sting to it. He knew that if he was going to make a serious impact, he needed to approach this methodically. The hotel's owners were well established, and they had deep roots in the industry. But Jonathan wasn't afraid of hard work, and he was prepared to go the distance. He started by gathering all the information he could about the hotel. It wasn't just about the immediate owners. It was about the entire business structure behind the hotel chain. Jonathan had connections, people he'd met during his years in business, and he knew how to use them to his advantage. His first step was to call in favors from a few trusted contacts. He spoke to people in real estate, investment, and finance, all of whom shared his belief that the hotel's reputation was about to take a serious hit. Many of them were eager to support him, not just because of his wealth, but because they respected his drive and vision. In the meantime, Jonathan worked closely with his lawyer, who helped him comb through the hotel's financial records. The deeper they went, the more Jonathan realized that the hotel wasn't as stable as it appeared on the surface. It had mounting debts, and its luxury status was more of an illusion than reality. Jonathan saw an opportunity, a chance to buy it out and reshape it to fit his vision of what a truly inclusive hotel could be. He wasn't just thinking about the business side of things. He was also thinking about the message it would send. But buying the hotel wasn't going to be easy. Jonathan knew that. He understood the complexities of mergers, acquisitions, and corporate negotiations. He wasn't just going to walk in and make an offer. This would take strategy, careful planning, and a fair amount of patience. The hotel's owners had pride, and they weren't likely to sell without a fight. To strengthen his position, Jonathan met with a group of investors, people who believed in his plan and saw the potential for change. He painted a picture of a new kind of hotel, one that would still offer luxury and sophistication, but also be a place where everyone, regardless of their background, felt welcomed and valued. It was a vision that resonated with many of his investors, who saw the market for inclusivity and diversity growing in the hospitality industry. They agreed to back him, and together, they set the wheels in motion. Jonathan spent the next few weeks negotiating, making calls, and finalizing details. There were a few roadblocks along the way. Some people were hesitant to sell, and there were moments when the deal almost fell through. But Jonathan was persistent. He understood that success didn't come easily, and if he wanted to teach the hotel's owners a lesson, he would need to stay focused. After several intense weeks of negotiations, Jonathan was able to make a formal offer. He was ready to buy the hotel, but he wasn't just offering money. He was offering a vision. He wasn't interested in just owning a luxury hotel. He wanted to change the entire business model, turning it into a beacon of fairness, respect, and inclusivity. It wasn't about revenge. It was about making a statement that would resonate far beyond the walls of the hotel. The offer was on the table, and Jonathan knew it was only a matter of time before the hotel's owners would have to make a choice. Would they accept his offer, or would they risk losing everything? The day Jonathan had been working towards finally arrived. After weeks of intense negotiations and careful planning, the deal was done. He was officially the new owner of the hotel that had once humiliated him. The moment he received the final paperwork confirming the purchase, a wave of mixed emotions washed over him. There was a sense of satisfaction, but there was also a deep understanding of the responsibility he now carried. This wasn't just about owning a hotel. It was about proving something to himself and the world. Jonathan had kept his plan a secret. Even his closest friends and colleagues didn't know the full extent of what he had been working on. He wanted to walk through those hotel doors, not as the man who had been kicked out, but as the person who had changed everything. He wasn't just returning to the hotel as an investor. He was returning as the one in charge. That afternoon, he walked into the hotel lobby, his steps confident and steady. The same marble floors, the same polished counters, and the familiar chandeliers. Everything looked exactly as it had before, but now it felt different. Jonathan stood at the entrance for a moment, surveying the space. It was his now. Every corner, every piece of furniture, every hallway. It all belonged to him. But more than that, it was going to reflect his vision. The staff were busy with their usual tasks, unaware of the changes that had already taken place. As Jonathan approached the front desk, he saw the same receptionist who had turned him away. She didn't recognize him at first, but Jonathan didn't expect her to. He'd changed since that night. He had grown not only in success, but in the quiet strength that comes with standing up for oneself. When she finally looked up and saw him standing there, her eyes widened in surprise. Jonathan didn't say a word at first. He simply gave her a calm, knowing smile. It wasn't out of spite. It was a reminder. A reminder that he wasn't someone to be dismissed. That one moment of humiliation had shaped him, but it didn't define him. It wasn't just about getting revenge or proving a point. For Jonathan, it was about transforming a space that represented everything wrong with the system into something that symbolized change. He didn't want to tear down the hotel or erase its history. What he wanted was to reshape it, to give it a new soul. He wanted this hotel to reflect the values he had fought for his entire life: fairness, inclusivity, and respect. The receptionist nervously shuffled a few papers, unsure of what to say. Jonathan simply handed her his new business card, now embossed with the hotel's name underneath his own. "I'm Jonathan Ellis," he said calmly. "I'm the new owner." Her face went pale. She stammered, unable to speak. The moment hung in the air for a brief pause. But Jonathan didn't linger on it. He wasn't there for drama or confrontation. He was there to start something new. He smiled, nodded, and walked past her, heading toward the elevator. As Jonathan ascended to the upper floors, he thought about the changes he would soon make. He had already started implementing new policies behind the scenes, hiring a more diverse staff, setting up new training programs to ensure that the hotel would never repeat its past mistakes, and focusing on creating a welcoming atmosphere for guests from all walks of life. When Jonathan reached the top floor, he stepped out of the elevator and took a moment to look out the large windows. From up here, the city stretched out before him, its lights twinkling as night began to fall. It was a beautiful sight, and Jonathan felt a deep sense of satisfaction. This wasn't just a business venture anymore. This was his opportunity to make a lasting difference, to turn a place that had once humiliated him into a beacon of what could be. The staff would soon learn who he was, and they would understand that things were about to change. For the better. The days that followed Jonathan's return to the hotel were filled with changes, both big and small. He wasn't interested in simply being another hotel owner who left things as they were. He had a vision, a plan that would redefine what this hotel stood for. The transformation was about to begin, and Jonathan was ready to lead the charge. One of the first things Jonathan noticed after becoming the new owner was the atmosphere. It wasn't that the hotel didn't have a certain level of charm. It did. The furnishings were luxurious, the service was typically top-notch, and the overall aesthetic screamed elegance. But beneath the surface, there was something missing. The hotel, despite its beauty, lacked the warmth that truly made a place feel welcoming. The staff didn't seem happy, and the guests often looked uncomfortable, as though they weren't sure if they truly belonged. Jonathan knew that to make this hotel a success, he had to address that core issue. It wasn't enough to just offer good service. It had to be a service that made everyone, regardless of their background, feel respected and valued. He wanted every guest who walked through the doors to feel like they were the most important person in the room, no matter their race, wealth, or status. To start, Jonathan implemented new training programs for the staff. These programs weren't just about teaching them the usual customer service skills. They were about teaching respect. They were about learning to treat everyone equally, to see beyond appearances, and to create an atmosphere where diversity was celebrated rather than tolerated. He made it clear that anyone who couldn't embrace this new vision wouldn't have a place at the hotel. He wasn't interested in mediocrity. He wanted excellence, and that meant setting high standards for his team. Jonathan also made changes to the hotel's hiring process. He wanted to build a diverse staff that reflected the values he believed in. It wasn't just about hiring people from different backgrounds. It was about giving opportunities to those who had previously been overlooked or undervalued. He knew that the best businesses were built on a strong foundation of inclusivity, and he was determined to set the example. The staff initially felt uncertain. Some were skeptical of the changes, wondering if this was just a passing phase or a gimmick. But as the days passed, they began to see Jonathan's commitment to his vision. They saw him walking the halls, speaking to guests, and engaging with the employees on all levels. He wasn't just an owner who sat in an office, making decisions from afar. He was actively involved in the hotel's daily operations, and he made it clear that his door was always open to anyone who had concerns or ideas. In addition to changing the staff culture, Jonathan also worked on revamping the hotel's services. He wanted to make sure that the luxury experience didn't come at the expense of feeling alienated. The hotel's restaurant, for example, had long been known for its high-end menu, but it often felt out of reach for many guests. Jonathan worked with the head chef to create a new menu, one that kept the elegance and sophistication of the original, but also included more accessible options. He believed that good food and exceptional service shouldn't be exclusive to a certain group of people. Everyone deserved to feel like they could enjoy a high-quality experience. Jonathan also made sure that the hotel's advertising reflected the changes he was making. He didn't want the hotel to be seen as just another luxurious, exclusive destination. He wanted it to be a place that everyone could enjoy. So he began marketing the hotel as a welcoming, inclusive space for all kinds of travelers. Whether they were looking for relaxation, business meetings, or a memorable vacation, his goal was to position the hotel as a true destination, not just for the wealthy elite, but for anyone who wanted a top-tier experience. It wasn't easy. Some of the staff resisted at first, unsure of what these changes meant for their jobs or their roles. But Jonathan was patient, and he made sure that those who truly wanted to be part of the transformation had the support they needed. Slowly but surely, the hotel began to change. It wasn't just about the physical space. It was about the culture, the service, and the way guests and staff interacted with one another. Jonathan knew that the real work had just begun. The changes he was implementing were only the start of a much larger journey, but he was committed to seeing it through. The hotel wasn't just his business anymore. It was his mission. He was determined to create a legacy that would leave an impact on the hospitality industry for years to come. The transformation of the hotel wasn't just something that happened behind closed doors. It became the talk of the town. News of Jonathan Ellis, the new owner, spread quickly throughout the city. People were curious about the changes he was making. Those who had once criticized the hotel for its exclusivity and unwelcoming atmosphere began to pay attention. Jonathan's name became synonymous with change, and not just in business circles. At first, the reactions were mixed. Some people couldn't believe what they were hearing. How could someone like Jonathan, a man who had been humiliated by the hotel only a short time ago, now own the place? It seemed almost unbelievable. Others, however, were intrigued by the idea of a more inclusive, diverse hotel experience. Jonathan's vision wasn't just about making the hotel a profitable business. It was about changing the entire culture of the hospitality industry. And that caught people's attention. Jonathan was invited to interviews, both on television and in newspapers, where he shared his story. He spoke about the incident that led him to buy the hotel, but he also emphasized the positive changes he was bringing. He didn't want to dwell on the past. Instead, he wanted to focus on the future. His message was clear. Everyone deserves to feel welcome. Luxury and exclusivity shouldn't mean making people feel excluded. His words resonated with a large audience. People who had experienced similar discrimination, even if in different settings, felt empowered by Jonathan's journey. They saw him as someone who had turned a negative situation into an opportunity for real change. It was more than just a business transaction for Jonathan. It was a statement about fairness, about creating spaces where everyone felt like they belonged, no matter who they were. As Jonathan continued to speak out about his vision for the hotel, he began to attract a following. Other business owners, particularly those in the hospitality industry, began to take notice. Some were skeptical, questioning whether his changes would actually work. Could a hotel, a place built on the idea of exclusivity, really succeed by embracing inclusivity? But Jonathan had the confidence and drive to show them it could. He wasn't just talking about change, he was living it. The hotel's success was proof that his vision was possible. One of the most noticeable changes was in the clientele. Before Jonathan's takeover, the hotel had catered almost exclusively to a certain class of people, wealthy, influential guests who valued status above all else. But under Jonathan's ownership, the hotel began to attract a more diverse range of visitors. Families, business travelers, tourists from all walks of life. All were now booking rooms at the once elite hotel. It wasn't about offering a less luxurious experience. It was about offering luxury that didn't come with the baggage of exclusion. The restaurant, too, saw a transformation. Jonathan had made sure the menu appealed to a wider variety of tastes and budgets, and it worked. The food was just as elegant as it had been before, but the atmosphere was more relaxed, more welcoming. Guests no longer felt out of place because of what they could or couldn't afford. The staff was trained to treat everyone equally, no matter their background, and that positive energy spread throughout the hotel. As the hotel's reputation began to shift, so did the public's perception of Jonathan. No longer just the businessman who had once been humiliated, he had become a symbol of resilience and leadership. His story of turning a negative experience into a force for good inspired others. People from all over the city and beyond started to support him, both with their patronage and their admiration. One evening, while Jonathan was walking through the lobby, he overheard a conversation between two guests. They were talking about how the hotel had changed, how it now felt more open, more inviting. One of them even mentioned how the hotel was now the go-to place for anyone looking for a luxurious experience that didn't come with the usual elitism. Jonathan couldn't help but smile to himself. This was what he had been working for. He had turned a place that once represented exclusion into one that embodied everything he believed in: respect, fairness, and dignity for all. The positive attention continued to pour in. Celebrity endorsements, positive reviews from guests, and media features started flooding in. Jonathan wasn't just a successful businessman anymore. He had become a leader in the fight for inclusivity in the hospitality industry. The change he had started at his hotel was no longer just about one establishment. It had sparked a conversation about what hospitality could and should be. Jonathan stood in the grand ballroom of his hotel one evening, a quiet smile playing on his lips as he looked around at the bustling event taking place. It was a celebration, a symbol of how far the hotel had come since he had taken ownership. The ballroom, with its high ceilings and elegant decor, looked magnificent, but it was the energy in the room that truly stood out. Guests moved about, laughing and chatting, not with a sense of unease or discomfort, but with ease and comfort. The air was filled with a feeling of warmth and welcome that hadn't been there before. The changes he had made were now visible in every corner of the hotel. From the redesigned spaces to the diverse staff members working together seamlessly, everything reflected the values Jonathan had worked so hard to instill. Guests were no longer just coming for the luxury. They were coming for the experience. They were coming for the promise that no matter their background, they would be treated with the same level of respect and care. As Jonathan walked through the crowd, he overheard snippets of conversation that filled him with pride. One woman was talking about how she had always avoided high-end hotels in the past because they made her feel like an outsider. But since Jonathan had taken over, she felt welcome and valued. Another guest mentioned how the hotel had become a favorite place for family gatherings, no longer just a destination for business elites. For Jonathan, these conversations were proof that the changes he had made were working. The hotel wasn't just successful, it was making a difference. When he reached the center of the room, a few of his staff members approached him. They were eager to thank him for the opportunities he had provided, and Jonathan smiled, nodding in acknowledgement. He had built this place not just to cater to the wealthy, but to create opportunities for those who might have been overlooked in the past. He had given people a chance, a voice, and now they were thriving. The hotel's diverse team was a reflection of his commitment to inclusivity, and seeing them succeed brought Jonathan a deep sense of satisfaction. Later that evening, as the event continued, Jonathan was invited to give a speech. He didn't prepare a long, detailed address. He preferred to speak from the heart. Standing at the front of the room, he looked out over the faces of the guests and staff members. This hotel, this space, is a reflection of what we believe in. It's not just about luxury. It's about creating an environment where every single person, no matter their background, feels welcome, where dignity, respect, and kindness are the standard, not the exception. The crowd fell silent, listening intently. Jonathan paused for a moment, gathering his thoughts. When I first came to this hotel, I was treated unfairly. But rather than letting that define me, I chose to change it. This hotel is more than just a business to me. It's a statement that we can do better, that we can treat each other better, and that we can make a real difference in how people experience the world. As Jonathan finished his speech, the room erupted in applause. It wasn't just a moment of success for him. It was a testament to the hard work and commitment of everyone involved. The guests, the staff, the investors, they were all part of the journey that had led to this moment. Jonathan wasn't just the owner of a hotel anymore. He had become a symbol of change, a leader who had used his resources and influence to make a meaningful impact. Later that night, as Jonathan walked back to his office, he reflected on how far he had come. The hotel was thriving, and he knew that the changes he had started would continue long after he was gone. He had built something lasting, something that wasn't just about profit, but about doing what was right. Looking out of his office window, Jonathan could see the lights of the city twinkling in the distance. He felt a sense of peace, knowing that his journey was more than just about the money or the recognition. It was about creating a legacy that would inspire others to stand up for what was right and to use their own success to make the world a better place. Jonathan had taken something negative, something that had tried to break him, and turned it into an opportunity to uplift others. And that, he knew, was the true measure of success. Months had passed since Jonathan had taken over the hotel, and now, as he stood in the heart of it once again, he couldn't help but feel a deep sense of pride. The journey from being humiliated and kicked out of the place to owning it had been long, filled with challenges and moments of doubt. But now, as he looked around at the vibrant energy that filled the lobby, he knew it had all been worth it. The hotel was no longer just a luxury destination. It was a symbol of everything Jonathan had worked for. It had become a place where people from all walks of life felt welcomed, where diversity was celebrated, and where every guest, no matter their background or income, could enjoy the finest service without the fear of being judged or excluded. The changes had not only affected the hotel itself, but had rippled throughout the city, starting conversations about inclusivity and fairness in the hospitality industry. The media had caught on to the transformation as well. Articles and interviews about Jonathan's story appeared in local newspapers, magazines, and on social media platforms. People spoke of him not just as a businessman, but as a leader who used his platform to make the world a better place. His story of resilience and his efforts to create an inclusive space had inspired many others. Business owners, from small startups to large corporations, took note of Jonathan's approach. They saw that success didn't have to come at the cost of human decency or respect. At the same time, Jonathan remained humble. He didn't let the attention get to his head. He knew that the true success wasn't in the accolades or the media buzz. It was in the everyday experiences of the guests and the staff who now felt like they truly belonged. The hotel had become a community, and that was something he was proud of. One of the most fulfilling aspects for Jonathan was seeing how the staff had grown. Many of the employees, who had once been hesitant or unsure about the changes, now spoke with pride about the hotel. They no longer felt like mere workers in an exclusive environment. They felt like valued members of a team that was doing something important. Jonathan had made sure that the new values of the hotel were instilled in every part of the operation, from the front desk to the kitchen, from housekeeping to management. Everyone was a part of the vision, and that sense of unity made the hotel a better place for both staff and guests alike. In the months that followed, Jonathan took the time to connect with his team personally. He'd hold meetings where he listened to their ideas, their feedback, and their concerns. He encouraged them to share their stories, to contribute their thoughts on how the hotel could continue to improve. Jonathan wasn't the kind of leader who simply dictated from above. He believed in the power of collaboration and mutual respect. And while the hotel continued to thrive, Jonathan didn't stop pushing for more progress. He began working with other business owners and community leaders to promote inclusivity beyond the walls of the hotel. His ultimate goal wasn't just to change one business. It was to shift the way people thought about success, respect, and kindness in all areas of life. He spoke at conferences and community events, sharing his experience and encouraging others to follow suit. He wanted to build a movement, not just a hotel. Looking out over the city from his office window, Jonathan couldn't help but reflect on how far he had come. What had started as a painful and humiliating experience had transformed into something powerful. He had taken a moment of disrespect and turned it into a catalyst for change. And in doing so, he had built something that would last far beyond his ownership. He had created a space that would always stand for inclusivity, kindness, and the idea that no one, no matter their background, should ever feel unwelcome. Jonathan knew that his journey wasn't over. There was always more work to be done, more lives to touch, and more opportunities to create for others. But as he stood in the hotel, watching people from all walks of life enjoying the space he had created, he felt a sense of peace. He had done something good, something meaningful, and that was all he had ever really wanted.